Go ahead, go ahead. So what we'll do is we'll talk for this 25, but then this is gonna be more than one session anyway. So what we'll do is chat through kind of who you are and what you do and some of the things that you see specifically in the NIL space, but then also when you talk about wrapping into wealth building, how do you see what you're doing? I know you have a financial literacy course, a piece of curriculum that's also out there. How do you see how this fits into the bigger pie of making a student athlete the wealth maximization machine that they can be? So with that, go ahead.
I said, let's get it started.
All right. So look, hey, welcome back to Whayle. Leon Oloya here, got Shalimar and Joy on as well. Joy, Shalimar, say what's up.
How's it going? How's it going?
Hey, got a special guest here. We got Mr. James Hall that we've been talking about over and over. And James is, and I'm going to say associate AD, but I know you have a lot of I know you're in the athletics department, and I know you have a ton of hats that you wear, but also have coursework with both NIL within the university, but then also I'll call it a broader curriculum platform that looks at the all-inclusive student athlete and person as a whole within one brands. And so, James, if you don't mind, as we dig into who you are and what you do and how we all can benefit from the knowledge you can share, why don't you give us a little background about yourself, how you got to where you're at, where you work at, so on and so forth.
Absolutely. No, appreciate you having me. I know you said you talked about me a lot. I hope it was all good. Just kind of leave it at that. But pleasure to be with you again. James Hall. I'm a senior associate athletic director and chief diversity officer at New Mexico State, finishing my 17th year here. It's certainly been a joy. Prior to that, I was at The Ohio State University in the academics for 10 years, monitoring the academic progress of the student athletes there. And then I like to say I was an athlete student at Iowa State University because I chose not to focus on my academics as I should have early on. And that's why I was actually Prop 48, which meant I was ineligible to compete coming out of high school. That's why I say I'm an athlete student, but fortunately was able to get into Iowa State after sitting out, earn my undergraduate and graduate degree there at Iowa State, speech communication undergrad, and then higher education grad school. It was great experience. I was able to be an All-American and just really touch all bases of when it came to be, again, going all the way from an athlete student to a student athlete to a staff member to an executive administrator at the collegiate level for the last 35 years. And it has changed drastically since if whatever you were doing pre-COVID, you can throw that out the window. Because anything after that, it is turned upside down. And so it's been fun watching the transformation, and NIL is the space that is capturing all of that right now.
Nice. So as a senior associate athletic director and chief inclusion diversity officer there at the university, you mentioned this drastic shift from pre-COVID to post-COVID, but then still having a wealth of experience across the 35 years. What are some of those things that, as your job shifted, call it from pre to post-COVID, that 35-year foundation, that solid foundation still carried true and through that gave you that building block before you talk about some of the things that actually did change and did have to adjust?
Sure. And the one thing that doesn't change is, your mentorship and the folks that sponsor you from a professional development standpoint, because they're the ones who are going to customize your leadership style. And it doesn't matter if it was pre or post. I think that's critical. And I think it's more important now than ever for that you have someone who sponsors you that has their finger on the pulse, that they're on the cutting edge, but they're also not too opinionated one way or the other as it relates to the factors I'm going to tell you about. mental health is huge today. Okay.
Yep.
Transfer portal, huge. You've got, obviously, we're talking about NIL. You're talking about gambling now. You're talking about drug policies. You're talking about conference realignment. You're talking about employee labor relations aspect there, right? And you're talking about cannabis. Just those 8 things right there.
That alone.
I mean, you have to be very balanced in your opinion when it comes to what direction you want to go. And another piece that's coming out is really the transgender aspect of athletics at the high school and the collegiate, even the professional level, right? And so I just saw an article yesterday where there was a young lady, I can't remember where she was from. I think it was Connecticut, but she was a state champion, but she got beat by a couple transgender student athletes. And so, she's protesting that. I mean, we weren't talking about this 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Right.
It was on the docket, but, now it has come full circle and now they're being able to compete. So just those 8 or 9 elements alone, you better have some good guidance and leadership from your sponsors who are teaching you this industry.
No, that makes sense. Go ahead, Joy.
So that's a lot. And yes, all of those things are like completely different today versus before. I want to start off with, what advice do you have? I have for 2 different people, but let's start off with just the athlete. I am a high school athlete. My son actually is a high school athlete, right? And he wants to go on to play college. He plays volleyball. What is your advice as the athletic director, as the guy who knows these issues that are coming up, as the person who, kind of take it to help these students get through? What do you tell that student in regards to not being an athlete student, or in regards to how do you pick that correct, degree? I always talk about Leon, because we have been fortunate to be friends since high school. And I know while he loved football, there was always a piece of him that knew it was an ends to a means, or possibly an ends to a means. Of course, everybody wants to go to the NFL, but that's a realistic thing, right? That real number of people that make it to the NFL or the NBA or to the soccer, whatever, like that's a very small percentage. What do you tell those other students? How do you set them on the right path to be successful and to come out as an AD or an engineer and not just be that athlete that gets lost?
Sure. No, great question. I think first and foremost, you have to understand 2 things. One, today's college athletics is a business, and you have to look at it that way. Secondly, for you, it will be a job, and it will be a full-time job. In fact, it'll be 2 full-time jobs, because you are a student and you will be an athlete at the next highest level, and the only level above that is professional. So you're pretty special. Only 6% of high school athletes go on to participate in intercollegiate athletics. So you're already special in that regard. I think the third piece, you have to do a very true assessment and evaluation of your talent level, because where you want to go and where you're at is going to make a huge difference in terms of your outcome and your planning. And then that's going to help you parlay your academics as well. So you really have, unless you have already been recruited, you have already received a scholarship, you're really going to have to understand that you're going to have to put a lot more thought into it and say, okay, where am I in terms of this process? If I receive a scholarship, great, you're on the high end. If they're saying that if they recruited you and they've called you, but they want you to be a preferred walk-on, you're in the middle. And then if they have interest because they've returned your emails, but they said maybe you could be a walk-on, then you're in the bottom third. And so you've got to assess how important that's going to be, of me spending 80 hours a week between being a student and being an athlete at this institution. Okay, what kind of balance do I have? And then that's also going to dictate how your experience is going to be. Some kids come from high school and they say, okay, I want to go right. You may not even make the travel squad. So now you're like, are you okay with that? Okay, are you okay with being redshirted? Because you don't get the choice to be redshirted. Your coach will determine that. Okay, and so you look at that. And the other is, do they have the academic curriculum that you would like to have? And do you have that choice? Some will say, yeah, I want to be math, but say we don't have a math major. Are you okay with that and going into another discipline that is math or science oriented? Maybe you have to go kinesiology route. So those are the things, Joy, right quick, that I would have individuals think about, that it's a business, that it's a job, and you have to understand you do an assessment about where you're at so you can plan your things out 4 or 5 years down the line.
I like it. So the other person I'm gonna ask for and is the person that wants to become you. If I want to be an AD, like, or I want to be a coach, you know, now I know there's some schools that actually offer like degrees in coaching, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe that's my passion. I know that my skill level has me at the bottom 30%, but I also love my sport, whatever my sport is. What is my path? What for you would be my, I know this is my passion. What is my clearest, I know you can't say it, you know, everything is going to be a little bit of everything, but what, you know, what are those suggested degrees I should be looking at? What are those internships I should be trying to get? You know, am I doing a graduate where you can, I know you can be like coach and in graduate school, like, you know, what is that?
Sure. I think the thing I would say is if you want to be like me, be better. So what I mean by that is you need to look at the person's profile. Look at what path they went through, and then look at a similar one and evaluate folks. What do you call it? Bios. And then you're going to see that there's a trend in what people took. And then sometimes the paths are going to be very different. I came through the student development route of intercollegiate athletics and being an executive administrator now. But now the route is the business development piece, right? It's the fundraising, right? It's that component of it, and the business aspect is where I would recommend folks to go. But I think it's important for you to read people's bios to see what kind of education he or she had, see what type of institution they went to. Was it public? Was it private? You know, those type of things. What kind of degree did they have? All of those things are going to really give you an idea. Okay, I fit this person's mold. And then when you talk to them, then they're going to be more interested in giving you some feedback because they know you've done your homework. So, Joy, that's the first thing. Do your homework about who you want to be, like, and then they're going to appreciate that, and they're going to say, yeah, I can help mold this person. And now you don't become a mentor. They will sponsor you because they know you've done your homework.
And I like that, because that goes to everything, right? In
Yes.
essence, that can be applied to whether I want to be a tax accountant, an engineer, right? Like I like that. You want to go, Lee?
Yeah. So when you look at the advice of now, you have these kids who their business, their employees actually have a job, and then be willing to work, and you're trying to help their advisor, which a lot of times is their parent, who might not have had any of this teaching. What are some of those things that you see as, how do you get people up the learning curve, specifically to, you know, like to somebody that wants to be an advisor to, either you're a parent of a kid that might have some NIL experience, you're an investor that wants to find a way to invest in NIL, but follow the rules to ensure you don't jeopardize, you know, the university in any way. Any advice you can give in that space to that type of audience, not necessarily the individual themselves, like the student athlete, but rather the advisor or the investor?
Yeah, I think that's really important, Leon. And I think the first thing you got to do is get into their world. You have to understand where they're at. You know, we talk about that a lot, right? Meet them where they're at. So if they really want to go to this, you know, large university, then let's talk about, okay, which university do you want to go to? Okay, I did the same thing with my daughter. So I said, okay, give me your top 5. She gave me her top 5 when she was coming out of high school. And, you know, of course, what was it? UCLA, it was USC, it was Hawaii. it was Florida, it was all them schools. I'm like, well, we live in New Mexico, and and unless you get an academic scholarship, Daddy ain't gonna be able to do that. But let's talk about it though.
Let's talk about it.
So what we did is so she talked about it, and then I had her do a research on it. Say now I want you to tell me how much it costs to go there. Okay, tuition and fees, room and board, and books, and then as Bill Cosby said back in the day on the Cosby Show, the incidentals and the accidentals. Okay, right? And then get them to start understanding the value of the education and the cost of it. And then they start saying, oh, wow, okay, I didn't realize Florida did this. I didn't realize UCLA did that. Oh, wow, I didn't know Hawaii was, that's cheaper, but that's way out there. And so you meet them where they're at, first of all, right? And so they can start drawing their own assumptions for their own picture, right? Because she started drawing different, she was coloring the logos and of UCLA and USC, and that was great. And so she became engaged, and it was an investment on her part, right? And then the parents, you're just like, okay, you don't know what you don't know unless you ask. Right. What is it that you would like to know? And this is what I always tell parents. I can promise you this, there are no silly questions. I can only give you a silly answer. So I want you to ask me whatever you like to ask. And if it's a group setting, fine. Afterwards, then we can do an individual session. But understand this, you're investing in your child's future, or your child is investing in his or her future. So you need to ask the questions, because that's where we can continue to formulate different sessions so that you become a high level investor and advisor, as you've talked about. Because I liken education to golf. Everybody thinks people are really good at golf until you get out there. You were like, okay, they can't really play no better than I can.
Yeah, they show all these low scores. They lying.
Right. Because most people don't realize only 26% of golfers can actually golf in the 80s.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody else is 90 and above. I can make that work then. It's no problem. But precisely why there's only, 67% of the American population between the age of 25 and 45 do not have a college degree. So everybody thinks everybody's educated. You might be, but you might not be certified and authorized either, which means you don't have your credentials. And so you get them to feel really comfortable, whether they're a first generation college student or whether they're not. You can say the dynamics have changed, the landscape and the scope of work. So we're going to work on that. So those are some things I would talk about, Leon. More importantly, meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
So I have a question as one of those parents, and we're venturing into this AAU world. So for me, as somebody grew up in the 90s, and AAU was this thing that was primarily basketball that people did, but majority of the time people did their sports inside their high school. That was where you got recruited from. That was where all of the focus was really, right? But now we're in this world where, particularly for volleyball and basketball, which happen to be the two sports my kids play, this in basketball really, really strongly, there's this whole new generation of AAU. And we have friends who play football, and I don't know if they call it AAU, but it's very similar, where there's this whole outside of the Institute of Education league of sports that are getting attention from colleges and things like that, or at least we think they are. So that's what I want to ask you, as somebody who, in essence, us parents who are trying to get their kids these scholarships, you're who we're looking at, right? You and the coaches are who we're trying to say, see us. Is AAU worth it? You're putting in thousands of dollars and all those things. Obviously, you're building the skill, but what are your thoughts on that? Where does that fall for you in regards to when you're recruiting or when you're looking for this student athlete, just in general? Where is there an age that it's more worth the investment? Is it, when you're starting your kid and you're doing this at 8, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it depends on what you want your outcome to be. Number one, if it's a scholarship, I think parents sometimes are delusional when it comes to that. I think you got to look at AAU from a training standpoint, and it's always good because they're training themselves up on that end, but very seldom are they going there to offer scholarships on that end. And you've got to do a really good assessment of understanding that, okay, there is 500,000 student athletes at the Division 1, 2, and 3 level. 62% of those individuals are not on athletic scholarship. Okay, there's not enough scholarships to go around. And what I mean by, let's use men's basketball, for example. There's 353 Division 1 basketball programs. Men can only have a maximum of 13 scholarships per team. So it doesn't matter. So if there's 20 people on that roster, 7 of them do not have a scholarship. Okay.
Wow.
And so you have a head count or equivalency sport. So basketball is a head count. So you either get a full ride or you get none at all. Track and field is equivalency sport. So Leon could be on tuition and fees. I can be on room and books, and Shalimar can be on books. And now we've got those 3. That equals 1 scholarship, because track and field can only have 18.3 scholarships.
Yeah.
So you've got to look to do the math. You have to understand where your son or daughter lies and continue to do what you're doing. Educate yourself by talking to people who are in the industry that are going to give you the information that you need to make good, concise decisions. Because you can spend thousands of dollars, but it's almost like spending a lot of money losing weight. But that's great. But if you don't have a nutrition program, if you don't have a supplement program, if you're not working out and you don't have a good diet, I don't care how much you're spending.
Right.
Okay, you've got to do your homework and your research and say, okay, where are we at with this right now? Who has talked to us? Who have we talked to? And where are we at as it lies to the recruiting cycle? Right? Because scholarships are off. So right now, if you're not on the radar for somebody at least talk to you or offers you a scholarship for football for this, but for early signing in December, you're behind the 8 ball.
Right.
So you've got to know the timelines and time frames as well.
Huh.
Okay. We're going to be down to our last 4 minutes. And so I want to do you have another question you want to get in, Leon?
I was asking about NIL, non-sports related, and how that also plays into wealth building and the curriculum of M1. So I know we're not going to be able to answer this whole question. So let's just talk about how much we can, and we'll get the next on the come. But when we think about NIL right now, it's definitely sports centric. But then when you think of folks like Jeff Bezos, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Jay-Z, Kanye West, none of these people are athletes. Yet they have a ton of NIL. And with that being said, as folks venture away from the student athlete and now the, whatever post-student athlete life is, the professional, how can they continue to leverage that NIL to better their wealth building scenario, throughout life, and how might M1 brands help out with some of that stuff?
Sure. I'll give you the quick elevator answer. Number one, student athletes today are their own business entity. So they are their LLCs. And they've got to understand that going in, and they've got to look at themselves that way every day. So you have to make sure Team Leon has the best interest for him. That's
right.
All the way from your mother to your father to your coach, to your homeboys, right, that are with you. If you all aren't gathering together talking about business opportunities within your NIL and LLC, you're in trouble, because then it's going to expand to a business advisor. Okay. And then you may have a talent agent, right? And then all those individuals say, if you give me 3, 4, 5, 6, 10%, I'll get you deals. Okay. So
right.
Now that 10,000 they may get you for the year, now that's cut because you got 10% that you have to give to them. Then
right.
you have to have what is the contractual agreement? What are the terms and conditions? Am I thinking about taxes? Am I thinking about the legal affairs? You got to put all that into play. And particularly for us and our young men and women of color, you have to start looking at that from a business entity, just like those individuals you mentioned, the Jay-Z's, the Kanye, all these individuals that are looking. The way they're looking at their business is the way you need to look at yours. And now you are your own entity with that. And so that's why it takes Whayle Mentality. That's why it takes Majority of One to get executive professionals who have done like Mountain Dew, been there, done that. We tell you how we're going to let you know how the market and the trend is going to play out. right? And so we can help you formulate the most important thing, your portfolio, so that you can maximize that. So when it's over, now you can have an exit strategy after you've graduated, whether you make it to the league or not. You've got some investments to be able to contribute to based on, you know, the educational platform, the informational and training that you've gotten from Whayle Mentality and the Majority of One executive advisors.
That was
There you
perfect.
go.
Our time is ending. We're definitely bringing you back for a part 2. Thank you so much for joining us, James. You've given us a lot of information. We're going to come back with a lot of questions.
Thank you.